Hello and welcome to another episode of Key Steps brought to you by the Advanced Workplace Institute. There's been a lot of talk about hybrid work in the recent times. One of the major challenges that management seems to be facing, and I speak to quite a few companies, and they say that, it's very difficult to make remote workers feel as wanted as the guy who actually goes to the office. Now, the problem is that if we cannot bring in that sense of equality between remote workers and people who actually report to work, and if the remote workers actually recognize that there's a link between my promotion or my professional success and being in office, I think the whole idea of hybrid model itself may make a little damaged. And I think in this, seamless connectivity becomes very, very important, and connectivity which can be brought about by a little bit of tech investments and small tweaks in the office as we know it. Now there's a lot of tech out there, and sometimes it's also confusing, right? What do I buy? How do I decide? Each one of that promises to do their own magic. Now, our guest today is someone special, Paul Wood, who is the Infrastructure and Operations Manager at CIPD. CIPD is a global professional body for HR and people development. Hi, Paul. Good to have you
Hi,
here. And
thank you.
during the pandemic, Paul, that you can see here now, had this challenge of bringing about changes for a bunch of employees, a bunch of professionals across the globe who are always dealing with people issues, and technology people. There's always this fight between the two. So welcome to Key Steps, Paul, and thank you so much for taking out time with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And before I go to you, Paul, just a quick word for the audience. Some of you hopefully have seen some of these episodes in the past. Like before, we like to keep this session as interactive as possible. We want your participation and include you in the discussions over chat and co-create some new ideas and some new thoughts. And so Paul and I will speak for about 10 minutes in the beginning, very quick 10 minutes. And then we would recommend that you type in your questions in the chat box that you can see if you're watching this from LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll see it on our dashboard. Yeah, and we'll bring it up on the screen. So it's like watching TV, and you can actually participate while watching TV. And Paul will respond to that live.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you so much. So Paul, jumping straight in, and from your experience during this pandemic and at CIPD, what would you consider to be the bare minimum changes that one needs to make on a tech side as well as in the office infrastructure side, so that remote workers actually feel as valued as those guys who were sitting in the office?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and one that there's lots of people out there asking themselves. Obviously, during this pandemic, lots of people were working from home um, with very little access to the office. So having the inclusion and the right settings in an office space is key. A little spend on adequate AV kit and Teams or Zoom or WebEx based hardware will then allow for a more inclusive meeting experience with, I suggest using like not facial recognition, but voice recognition. So whoever's speaking in the room, anyone who's remote, the camera will zoom in on that person and allow everyone to feel included in who, even if they're not in the room. Other key things around those sort of things is also not using whiteboards or paper flip charts in meeting rooms. And again, trying to go to a more digital aspects of using like Miro or Microsoft Whiteboard. These things help massively in making anyone remote feel included in the meeting space.
This thing about, you said not to use flip charts and all of that. In fact, I had a workshop earlier today, and we used all these post-it notes that we placed everywhere, and we had this laptop which was trying to make sense of what was going on the board, which is probably about 7 feet away, and the other guy was struggling to understand what's being written on there and what was being said.
Yeah.
This and you said that Miro is a solution for this, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Miro is a great collaboration tool. Obviously, its sole purpose was collaboration, doing exactly this sort of thing, getting everyone, doesn't matter where you are, everyone can be accessing and editing the same deck essentially at the same time. So you can have people remote, people in the meeting room itself, people in the same building but not in the meeting. editing and actually actioning on that in a live way, and you can see by names who's doing what. So it allows for an immersive, interactive, inclusive experience, basically, so everyone's involved.
I mean, easier said than done, Paul. I mean, you make it sound so easy, but I'm sure you had people, across the. Did it require a bit of training, around all this, or people picked up on their own?
It's a good question. I mean, training. So everything that you change in the environment will require some form of training. When people have been away from the office for so long and they got very used to doing things, they may have left an office pre-pandemic when they had a desk, they've had their own phone, they've had their own, everything about that little enclosure was theirs. Now, going back after the pandemic, lots of office space is going into what's like an agile format. This basically then means that anyone can sit anywhere, and you need to take people through and include them in the journey of where they're going from, what they're going to, and what the benefits are going to be of those new settings, essentially. So another key thing is making sure that every setting that's within your space that you're going to be using for your staff has the correct usability. So like either having pods for quiet work or meeting room spaces that are small, medium, and large, all those sort of things. Anywhere where you've got the AV kit, making sure again that that's kit that will help with an inclusive experience for anyone connecting remotely, be it someone within the company or third parties. All of these things are really key.
And when people were logging in remotely during the pandemic, were they doing it from their own home computer, or did you supply those to them? And were there issues around that?
This is another interesting point, because obviously pre-pandemic, lots of places may have been in a position where they were using desktop PCs in the office and not laptops. So there's been a big change over this pandemic where people have gone from being desktop based to using a laptop and having it provided, or businesses have had to find new ways of allowing staff to connect to their infrastructure in a secure form. So by this, I mean, there is obviously there's different solutions. I'll talk about it quickly about Microsoft one. You got Azure Virtual Desktop that was Windows Virtual Desktop. That's one way of securing data. You've got obviously conditional accessing within Microsoft Endpoint that will allow you to have people connecting to the Microsoft infrastructure like 365 using single sign-on and MFA, so secure connections. And you also obviously have the ability for people to use VPNs to get back into the office. Now, one of the things that, again, helps with remote workers is, as much as possible, using the Microsoft sign-in solution and not having to go through VPN, because obviously that then hinders how people connect. And also you don't want people VPNing in from their home PCs and stuff like that.
So you're saying this is actually secure. So the days of when I used to have friends who carry 2 laptops home over the weekend, so that's gone.
Yes, it can be gone. Again, it's very much an individual business choice and around how they want to secure their data and how they want their users to be accessing it. It all comes down to, as you said before, how you train people. One of the other key things is the kit that people are using at home. If you're providing it as a business, you need to make sure it's of a good enough quality that will help and aid your staff to actually work from home in a functional way. Because this device they're using now, they'll be using in their office, in remote locations, or at home. So it needs to be robust. It needs to also, you need to be supplying, I would have thought, decent home office kit. So for instance, with everyone been for the past 2 years working from home, from a facilities point of view and health and safety, you've got the aspect of the chairs. Is the workspace adequate to work in? Do you need a docking station? Do you need a keyboard and mouse? Do you need multiple screens or a single screen? There's all these different things to think about, but all of these things then help the remote worker feel included in the complete organization, even if you're actually going into an office.
Right. I mean, if it's 100% remote, I think we've all kind of sorted that out. We know how to do that. But one of the problems I hear people often talking about is that, okay, I want to work in office for 2 days in a week, and and I need to have the choice of selecting those days during the week, my seat and all of that.
Yep.
Have you dealt with this issue as well as people started coming back, and how did
Yeah,
you deal with this?
of course. I mean, one of the things that many organizations out there would have gone through this, but it is a booking system. So we introduced at CIPD a booking system very early on because we were going from a four floor building down to only using one floor. So at that point, obviously, all the staff that used to come in can no longer all come in. So we had to go into, we got a booking system that's integrated back into Microsoft Exchange. Every desk is can be booked through that booking system. Every meeting room can be booked through that booking system. And each of these different settings, we then allocated a different time frame to. So we try and encourage staff not to sit in a meeting room for the entire day, for instance. We would book different size meeting rooms with different time values associated against them. So this then let people, they could see who was coming in as well. So if they wanted to come in and sit with someone they knew, they could obviously come in and book a desk near them. And you could do, we did it so you could book a desk up to 2 weeks in advance, and a meeting room from memory, I think was up to 3 months in advance. But this also then brought about the question, what happens if someone doesn't turn up and that desk is then sat there without anyone using it? And one of the, obviously within the solutions, you can have it so that if you don't check into a desk, then the actual the setting or the resource is released back into the pool so someone can book it themselves. One of the other key things on the whole booking system was making sure you had some way of obviously doing the COVID tracking if for that side of things, but also the ability to block desks so they couldn't be booked to allow for the spacing between people. But the booking system was key. I mean, it allowed people to basically schedule when they were coming in. You could have team spaces booked out as well by one person for an entire team. You could have whiteboard rolling around glass boards. Yeah, it's definitely a key thing.
Right, and just a shout out to the audience. Please type in your questions or comments. You can actually type in your comments also. Whatever you're hearing here, and what you feel about that in the chat box, and we'll see it here. One of the things I know, I'm probably going off on a tangent, Paul, but when you talk about a booking system, there are other systems in place, right? In most organizations, there could be a attendance system, there could be an IBMS system, and there could be a bit of automation there, which could be asked for. Have you seen any integrations taking place in between the booking system, IBMS, HR systems, all that?
In the particular one that we're using, there isn't that sort of integration. There's integration with facilities and with reception and guest access and things like that. There's no link into the HR platform as such with ours at the moment. But it is the sort of thing that I would think coming down in the future, we're going to have these sort of things integrated. I mean, automation again is a big key thing that is going to help remote workers, because you're not going to have all the people in the office you used to have. So you're going to need to have a structure in place from a technology standpoint that allows staff to select and automate issues and literally do repeatable tasks, but without people having to be there.
Right. Yeah, we have a question from Lisa Whitehead. Thank you, Lisa, for that question. What are some effective ways you have used to train people to use the full capabilities? Interesting. How do you do this remotely?
Yeah. So one of the things we've done, so obviously at CIPD, when we started looking to open the office again, and we'd gone through this big change essentially from having the dedicated desks to only having one floor and agile space. It was thought about how we're going to train people. So what we went through, we actually did an induction program where we had groups of people coming in, socially distancing at the time, because obviously we had to, bringing them in, taking them from a tour of the office. Some people had never been to the office because they joined during the pandemic. And also obviously got people who have been there a long time and that they're wanting to understand what's changed. So we did a guide of the actual building between facilities, HR, and technology, and each level, we then went through the setting space and explained to them what the settings were for, how to use them, how you're going to be able to charge your devices, how the new Wi-Fi would work, how the new printing would work. We then did an entire live demonstration on the Teams hardware itself in the meeting rooms, which is about 45 minutes, where I went into more detail on how to use the Wi-Fi, how to use the booking systems. It was a very manual process going through all this, but I felt it was the best way of actually conveying it. We did have people actually joining the inductions who didn't feel comfortable coming into the office, and they joined it through the Teams session. So they would actually, the meeting I set up, would they then actually join that meeting and be part of the actual meeting that way. We also did a lot of work on our internal intranet, putting all the data on there as well, with videos, with how-to guides, and QA cards essentially. And this is getting updated all the time, but definitely having people either in the office for a live induction, joining those inductions remotely, and with all the content on your intranet, or sending content out to staff, or having it in a central location they can get to if you have no intranet, is how I'd go about doing that.
Yeah, so brilliant. I mean, that's training that you do one time in the beginning. And I'm just beginning to think like the kind of stuff that not a homeworker, the remote worker will have, the kind of problems that you'll have. I could have bad Wi-Fi today, but you're sitting in the office, you're on a super highway. There could be a different set of problems that the remote guys would have. Did you set up some kind of a help desk for these guys, a separate help desk, or how do you deal with this?
So we have our ITSM platform is cloud-based anyway, so it's not internal to us. So you don't have to be on the network to actually log tickets. It's single sign-on still, so it's through 365 logins. So even if you're having a problem at home with your Wi-Fi, or you're having a problem with connectivity of any kind and you're a remote worker, you can still log a ticket into our support platform through a mobile device using 4G, 3G, anything like that. So there's always a way of logging issues. And then obviously we have access to remotely connect to everyone's devices, obviously with consent. And even users' home devices, we can help them, talk them through things if they're connecting to things. So we did think about that, and the solution we went for with the ITSM platform allowed us the ability for our staff, even if they're having connectivity issues, to still log an issue. So they're not just in the cold without any support; they can still reach out and get support.
Right. I wanted to ask you this question. I began by saying that the hybrid. So along with hybrid work, the other word that you keep on hearing about is the metaverse. Ever since somebody announced that whole word last year, although it's always been there. I mean, of course, there are two schools of thought around that. My point is that, okay, fair enough that we are all getting to be on the virtual platform more and more. And what this really means is that the value of the office, the physical office, in terms of the experience that I'll have in the physical experience, also has to be curated to that extent, in the sense that on the metaverse or only online, every pixel can be designed, right? But when you go to the office, you're dealing with a lot of risks associated with that. Your bus may not come on time, your car may break down, all those issues. So from an organizational point of view, what do we need to do, you think, to actually make curated experiences for people when they come into the office? Or do you think it's not an issue that we need to worry about right now?
I love technology. I'll start by saying that. I love technology. Everything I do is based on technology. But in my lifetime, I can't see the metaverse replacing remote working. And I'm going to say remote working, and I don't mean people at home. I mean by remote working, anyone like in a WeWork, in a Regis. I think, and again, this is going to be controversial for me. I think the need to have large offices as a corporation are gone, because the past 2 years have shown us that the hybrid working situation, or even just remote working, businesses can still function if they are based on that sort of staff base, should we say. Do I see the future where everything will be in a headset in front of you, or you're going to see digital people walking around an office with you? I'd love to think there will be, definitely. Okay, but in my lifetime, I don't think so.
Yeah, I kind of share the same thought, but I'm just thinking till we get there. I mean, what do we really have to do about the office? Uh,
Yeah.
Okay, audience, if you have any questions, please ask. Last shout out to you. But before we go, before we get to your question, I just have one thing, small announcement to make. That at AWI every month we focus on one topic. So this month the topic is really hybrid work and technology, and we hope that Paul will be back with some other activities that we do throughout the month. So we have this key steps. We have a webinar which is coming up on the 16th as well, which will feature the founder of Advanced Workplace Associates, Andrew Mawson. Please do join if you want to join. Write into me. And we also have 2 podcasts every month around the same topic. So if you'd like to be part of these, if you'd like to be included in activities, please do write to me. I'll share my email with you. Okay, so we have one more question coming in, which is the most rewarding experience to the WFH team member is the compensation package. Is there an efficient way of calculating the man hours put in by the interesting?
It's interesting, but it's like a double-edged sword. I mean, either you trust the staff to be doing their work from home, and the hours they're working, they could be working very different hours to everyone else, because normal 9 to 5 is not a thing these days. So they could be doing 8 till 4, they could be doing 7 till 2 or 7 till 3. But this is the same sort of question. How would you answer that if they're in the office? And how do you calculate how many
Yeah,
hours someone's working in the office because they're just in an office sat there? Just because they're in the office doesn't mean they're working. So it's a very double-edged question.
right. It is. Yeah. But I think the manager in the office knows that if I see this guy in front of me, okay, he's working. And that's been the psychology, right?
But that's
Uh,
me. That's the old way of thinking now.
that's the
Because
old
obviously
way
for
of
the past
thinking.
2 years,
Yeah, yeah,
they've not had that. They've had to rely on actual delivery of work,
right.
which
Yeah,
in some respects is what it should be about. I mean, just because someone isn't online when you're online doesn't mean they've not delivered everything they're supposed to deliver or gone above and beyond of what they're delivered.
right. Yeah,
Just because you see
absolutely.
someone in the office doesn't mean they're working. It's a very hard one to answer because it comes down to the management, and if anything, it comes down to the line manager of that person trusting the staff that they're actually delivering the work they're delivering and not basing on how many hours they're working.
Yes, and to that question, I know that there are platforms like Dovico and other stuff, right, where you can actually log in your hours whenever you're remote as well. And I know of people who actually, whenever they start working in the morning, they'll put on Dovico and it'll start measuring the number of hours that they have put in, and it'll automatically calculate the man hours spent every month on a particular project. So there are these tools, but yes, like Paul says, it's a double-edged
Yeah.
sword.
Yeah. I mean, another one is like Carpe Diem, like law firms use. Everything's tracked. Every single thing you do is tracked in that but that's like to be billing back outside. But
Yeah,
for me, it comes to trust. It's the line manager has to trust the staff.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. So, Paul, we'll leave with that.
Yeah,
I trust that the audience has a good time, and and
I
that's the.
definitely did.
I enjoyed my conversation. Thanks so much, Paul. That's my email ID. So if you'd like to be part of further sessions, please write into us. We'll keep you posted. And thanks a lot, Paul, once again for doing this. I really enjoyed this. There's some pointers out there which I'll take back as well. There's learning from the workshop that we had. Uh, in today, and I had a difficulty with this post-its. I got a solution there as well. Thanks for that,
Yeah,
and
no worries.
thanks to the audience for spending time with us. Yeah, bye for now.
Thank you, Father. Cheers.